Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jane Addams meeting. So Regina is our guest speaker tonight, and we're excited to have her. And Ellen Mass recommended her, and Ellen's very excited about Mexico and what's happening there. And so I'm going to let her introduce Regina. Ellen has been she's a lifetime member of WILF and has been to Mexico, has been following what's happening, and her sixth article appeared in MAPA, Massachusetts Peace Action Today. So I'm just going to turn it over to Ellen. So Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you, Diane. I'm thrilled to have a program on Mexico from the Jane Addams branch because Jane Addams was one of our founders, and of course she is known mostly for her great contribution to peace and social work. You know, she was first president, and she was championed the people of the neighborhoods, of those who were destitute and who needed a great deal of help. And she was also very cultural minded in her Hull House in Chicago. But I bring her up because the Benny Star program in Mexico is full of people care. And that's what it means, Benny Star, good luck, good good. What does the star mean? Benny Star. Anyway, Regina will tell us about that in a minute. Regina, I don't have your credentials in front of me, but one of the reasons we're here with Regina is that she is a friend, but she's also my Spanish teacher from Mexico City. And she's done this type of work herself, meaning she's done volunteer social work in Oaxaca and or was it Chiapas? I forget, was it Chiapas?
Chiapas, right.
And she's quite knowledgeable, and I've learned a great deal of Spanish, and I've learned a lot about Mexico City from Regina. So I think that what I want to say about myself is how I got into this whole thing is that I began to follow Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, AMLO for short, that everyone knows now, who was able to finally, in 2018, get elected after he was the popular choice in 2016, but there was a lot of evidence that there was a lot of hanky-panky that kept him out of office at that time. Very, very popular leader that has really started the fourth transformation and transformed Mexico. And Claudia, in her footsteps, has been able to do even more and has a whole different style and just as strong a following as he did, because they're changing it for the people. Her big slogan is from the bottom up. And that is being picked up throughout Latin America as a slogan. That's how they want to go, including Colombia. And we saw that at the recent CELAC, the regional conference with 33 nations coming there. And it was in Honduras, but now the new president is Gustavo Petro. And she really took the spotlight. There was no question that Mexico is what other Latin American countries and Caribbean countries are aspiring to because of their economic success. And because they've been able to do this with a lot of fair play. In other words, they've put the greedy on the sidelines to a great extent, so much so that June 1st, they're going to even elect their own magistrates and judges and their ministers and the Supreme Court. All of that is 4,000 positions are going to be elected by the people. So I think this is very important to know. Of course, what we have here, I think most of you get, is newspaper articles, and they're all basically Mexico is a cartel center and it's a violent place, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I hope Regina will set us straight on really what Mexico's about. I'm just telling you what's come to me, why I follow it. Started with AMLO, and now I'm just as much enamored with her. And the reason why is I don't just fall in love with great expectations and charismatic leaders. It's because Mexico's part of North America, and North America is us. It's Canada, it's the US, and it's Mexico. And my hope and my if they don't get clobbered, and I mean literally, they will be the future of North America. That's what I think, and that's what I hope. And I don't know, but that's my thinking. So I'm gonna turn I'm gonna turn it over to Regina, who's another generation from me, and I think she can enlighten us more. And I hope people will stay open-minded and not just grab the headlines and say, well, this is what I heard, because there's still problems, and I'm sure she'll tell you about it. So Regina, say a little bit more about yourself. I have everything in front of me, but your credentials, your resume, your so
Hi, thank you so much, Ellen. I feel so inspired listening to you and hearing you speak of Mexico, because it's like a turnaround for us as a country. It's like very new to be in this situation, but we're very happy about everything that's going on. So, yeah, thinking about like myself and my story, I thought of the things that I think have been the most important that have really shaped my perspective and how I've been informed. And well, I studied in Canada for a year when I was 16. I was fortunate enough to study at boarding school. And that was the first experience that I had away from Mexico, where I was like contrasting my society with another society. And it just sparked so many questions for me, and like so many new ways of looking at things. And also, a very big part was the love of nature. I just fell in love with nature. I fell in love with the fall. I'd never seen something like that. We don't have seasons in Mexico. So that year was just like a game changer for me. I came back and I started watching documentaries and finding out about fast fashion and corporations and just poverty and how things work and why Mexico was the way it was. And yeah, I started getting very, very engaged. And yeah, I realized that there was something very deep to the problems with our society. Eventually, I majored in social responsibility and sustainable development. Um, so basically, that entire time, it was about understanding how the world operates, how corruption operates, and it just gave me so much information. It was so insightful into how complex this society is, and how big and how connected everything truly is. While I was doing that, I volunteered in Chiapas for 2 summers. I have a cousin who was the director of an NGO, and they had really interesting work because they were based in San Cristobal de las Casas. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It's just so unique. It's like this town in the mountains, and it's like a misty forest. So it's just like luscious, and there's just so much artisanry and indigenous communities that converge in that area. And the work was to go around with these communities, some of the poorest communities in the country, and the NGO was helping them like have a savings box, and it would encourage everyone to save up money and like start up like a certain financial community dynamic that would trigger them having access to like the specific needs that they need that they had. And so figuring out also what those needs were. And so we would travel around with the different communities. And I really think that this is the kind of experience that no one that I know has ever gotten. And this is not the things that you read on the newspapers. This is not a headline kind of thing that you understand. This is something that you only understand when you see it. And it was very deep going to these communities and seeing the conditions that they lived in and the violence. This was over 10 years ago. This was about 12 years ago. The isolation that they live in, the violence is just like you would not believe that you arrive at a place and they tell you that someone was murdered last night right there outside the bar because there was like a fight between drunk men. And they have machetes and all sorts of guns that they get from the local government. And you just start realizing that there's just so much to the problem. Like it's a very large scale situation, and like how people end up in those kinds of poverty traps. And it was very intense to see, for example, like the presence of Coca-Cola and the multinationals, and how it was they who owned the land. The land was given by the government. The government of Chiapas has been the same for, I don't know, 7 generations. So the state is basically owned by politicians and multinationals. And the people are left with barely anything from a piece of land that is different from where they grew up. So they've lost their entire knowledge from the land and their ways to survive. And it was very heartbreaking. And I was so fortunate to get that experience, because I feel like we read a lot about poverty. We read numbers and figures and statistics, but we rarely get to be in the house of poverty. And I really had that chance back then. And it was I thought about it a lot, and just understanding how complicit the government was into these kinds of situations was very heartbreaking. I was like, well, I want to figure out then how the government works. Like, how does this happen then? So I did an internship at the Secretary of the Environment for 6 months, because honestly, I couldn't take any more. And yeah, this was also about like 11 years ago. And again, it was very interesting, but at the same time, it was very harsh, because you would constantly be dealing with what I thought was personal agendas. Ultimately, what everything was about was everyone's personal agenda. And I was fortunate enough to participate, or well, be present. For example, when they did a change to a law regarding agriculture, and just watching like a room full of men in suits, like writing here, this or there, regulating over people that they've never met, talking about how they need to restrict more and enhance the punishments regarding certain issues with deforestation related to agriculture, etc. But I just remember being in that room and observing like the arrogance with which everything was being done, and just thinking like, these people have never been face to face with the people that they're just deciding their lives over. It was just like so crazy to me to see this disconnection between our politicians and the people and corporations from like the people. Even experiences where there was like once a protest where they came to, it was like a community of doctors, lawyers, like working people, and they had to come protest because the secretary had just accepted the construction of a factory to burn trash. And so that would emit, like the emissions that they were gonna emit were like clearly above what was safe. And that community had already had 2 explosions with factories like that before. So it was like their lives that they were there to protect. And I remember being there at the meeting. They met up with my boss, and I'll never forget that my boss was like this during the meeting, like in like this power pose of absolute arrogance and like this connection from the people. So yeah, that was a lot too. And then eventually I ended up working at a marketing agency. I was in the area of sustainability. And I loved it for a while, but eventually I kind of also felt that we couldn't avoid ending up in greenwashing. That at the end of the day, that seemed to be the job. And I got very depressed with that, to be honest. It was very harsh. And I actually started teaching Spanish during that time online. Right now it's raining a lot in Mexico, which I'm very happy about because it's been very hot. So the rain is amazing right now. But yeah, I worked at the agency, and then I started doing the Spanish lessons. The pandemic hit after a while, and the Spanish lessons just skyrocketed. And it's what I've been doing fully for the past 7 years. So yeah, I don't know if with that you have like any questions, or should I just continue? You guys tell me.
So I have no questions so far, but I just want to hear about your perception of the political leaders now and any changes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. For me, well, politics in Mexico are a very controversial topic because normally there's most people love Claudia, and I include myself there, but there's like a class situation with her. So it's very common here for like the higher middle class or the higher class to hate her and think that she's driving us to become like Venezuela. That's what the headlines say, and people fall for the headlines, as Ellen mentioned. But with my personal experience, and I believe that I'm far more knowledgeable in certain areas than most people are because my information did not come from headlines. But what I see is something that really excites me because with López Obrador, for the first time, the previous president, I saw an actual understanding of what people need, like an actual understanding of the depth of the problem, and that it's not just an economical situation, that this is not just something that we work out with another president who's an economist and knows numbers. This is something that we're going to work out by solving people's actual needs.
Uh-oh.
She got frozen for a moment.
Yeah. Does that happen much? But Ellen takes lessons from her. So does that happen very much, do you think? Or
No, hopefully she'll come back on. I just wanted to say to remind people that this was 11 and 12 years ago under, I think it was Fox. Fox was the last president
right. He was the president. Yeah.
under this, and this is what AMLO and Claudia have made it clear was the neoliberal period, and they had 35 years of that with Nieto and even Carranza, am I saying him? Carranza. They had the three, it was a long time, and that was why it was so hard to get a progressive in there like AMLO. So let's see, maybe she went off and came back in. Let's see here. Okay.
We have a question from Cheryl, but I don't see that Regina has come back in.
But maybe Ellen can clarify.
Okay.
She was just talking about a class situation and headlines and Venezuela, and I didn't really follow. So why does somebody in the media think that Claudia is leading them in the direction that Venezuela went? Is that what she was saying? What are they accusing her of?
The opposition is she's referring to the party called PRI or PAN that was in power before those 35 years I was saying. And that AMLO was part of that, and he evolved into another, he created his own party. He was active and actually in leadership in one of the earlier ones, but he evolved. No, the opposition, the headline she was speaking about is that still a lot of the media is in the hands of a more conservative public, the neoliberal thinking of that time. And I hope people know what neoliberal means, because I We'll have to work on that definition. But no, she is saying that they are the that's
Conservative, the group.
even belong to that, or a part of that opinion. And in the Aztec media, it's called Aztec. And is that, there she is.
She's
Good.
back, yeah.
You're back. I'm glad. Cheryl.
I'm back on my phone.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad. Well, Cheryl has just asked about the opposition and why Venezuela came up in your some of your friends or some of the opposition it believes that Mexico could become like Venezuela. So that's a controversy even here. Some people would question. I've been to Venezuela and I like it very much, but others, that's not our topic so much tonight.
Yeah.
But maybe you can just clarify what you meant by that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So what happens is that, like I said, finally there's a president who is not friends with people who have corporations or like friends with the corporations. So AMLO was really like the first one who stopped being willing to give all the benefits to corporations and not pay taxes. For example, Coca-Cola didn't pay taxes in Mexico. Volkswagen during the pandemic, that's actually how he got us through. He got corporations to start paying taxes, or before the 7-Elevens and 7-Eleven like stores would get the electricity for free. No one knew this. No one knew that they were being subsidized. Yet family-owned businesses were struggling to pay their bills, their electricity bill, to have 1 or 2 freezers, and they could barely get by. Before, Mexico used to be full of family-owned local stores. Everything was a family-owned store, and now everything is a 7-Eleven. And so AMLO is the first one to turn around and say, how did that happen? How come Oxxos suddenly get to have 14 freezers and then the family-owned businesses can't? What's going on? So he really started to tear apart kind of how the government being complicit with the private sector for their own benefit because they get a cut from it is really impacting the people, and how those are the things that need to get fixed. That's really where the corruption is. And that's really Mexico's problem. It's been the corruption, because other than that, we have every single resource we could ever ask for. Those people in Chiapas living in extreme poverty, they had every single resource around them. They had water, they had trees, they had every single thing, but they couldn't own anything. Nothing was theirs, and they couldn't take anything. So they were somehow pushed to be isolated, yet find a way to make money so that they could buy food, so that they could buy water, instead of using the water springs that Chiapas is full of, but they're all owned by corporations. And so, yeah, that puts people on top in danger, because then companies cannot exploit the land in the same way. They cannot exploit the people in the same way, because now we actually have to pay what's right. And that really cuts on our margins. So for people on top, that is a threat. And that's where all this like, oh no, now this president, he's a populist. He's just like, it's just like, we have this saying in Spanish, like, it's just bread and circus. It's just like a way to like make poor people happy. But yeah, in reality, it's like Ellen said, it's having a strategy that goes from the bottom up. And so for the up, things become a bit shaky. But honestly, looking at things, I just find it ridiculous, because at no point did AMLO and Claudia, who has continued his agenda, and that's part of what makes her so strong, that you know that she comes with an agenda that is really well thought out, really well planned. And then she as a person is also just like incredible. But I lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's basically here the media is owned by the people on top. So we're gonna see in the media just all kinds of things. That's also why I try to get my knowledge from what I hear from people too, from what I see, because what I see in the media, like, you never know, and that's been like that in the past too. There's even like a very good documentary on Netflix about how they staged many years ago, many years ago, during the war on drugs, how they completely staged certain operations, and like major news people were the ones that did it, and so they were complicit too. So I think it's very important for me to listen to people and to really get a sense of my own of what's going on, as well as what's going on online. And I'm so happy to finally see that Mexico is being more represented on international news, because then that also opens it up for other people to come in with their objective view and have their own sources of information. And I've come to see that it happens a lot, that outside the information is better than it is inside. But I think that slowly people are really seeing that their fears, none of it came true. We're not even close to becoming Venezuela. We're not even close to becoming a socialist country. We're not even close to an economical catastrophe. It's been quite the opposite. We've stayed super stable. Some very important numbers have been going down in violence. I do hear from the people around me that they're getting their government help, and I do know that it's reaching places that they needed to reach. So it's been a very big shift from just 10 years ago to now. And I do think that it's very exciting. And it has been a surprise to see someone like Claudia take over. I think none of us expected that. And I think we were all very excited by the change.
Can I ask you a few questions that would, some of which you may have already answered, but it would help you, and you choose which ones are on your, you handle it as you would like. Like, these are some questions I had formulated before that would just fill this in. What is Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo's background and earlier held offices? How does this help you qualify her for a strong presidenta? Why is she so popular as a Jewish scientist in a Catholic country? Does she have opponents? You've mentioned that, and why, and who are they? You've done that well. Americans know mostly about drug cartels and immigrants coming to the US border. What do you and your sister Mexicanas feel about that? Is she improving the situation? What kind of economic success with her work and projects does she have today among her supporters? Some say Mexico is becoming a world leader. What does that mean? How are women being impacted with her policies? What are her best policies? What is your, you gave your background. What is your advice to Americans who are interested in Mexico or who want to visit? These are just some general questions that cover topics that some of us have been exposed to, but we're a women's organization that is so really focused on uplifting women and seeing them in the best possible light. So any of those would be fine, I'm sure.
Perfect. Yeah. So about Claudia's background, that I think is very relevant, is the fact that she's a scientist. Normally we have economists for presidents, and I think that a scientist has such a more broad perspective of things. And the fact that she participated in an investigation that earned a Nobel Prize, for me, really speaks of someone who is incredibly dedicated, and who just has like this drive, this very honest and very genuine drive for information, for improvement. So personally, for me, that was very big. I think that as a Jewish scientist and as a woman in president in Mexico, I think people were had already seen the white guy, a traditional conservative president. They'd already seen with Felipe Calderón, with Peña Nieto, in the 90s, also in the 80s. Historically, they'd had their chance. And so I think that when a woman came up and she turned out to be Jewish, people embraced it. People were like, yeah, I mean, if she's, I think the fact that she was with Lopez Obrador definitely gave people immediate trust in her. And then she demonstrated that she deserved that trust. Like the moment you hear her speak, to me, things just like her demure and her character speak levels. I think that you need a great amount of intellect in order to hold yourself that way. And so, yeah, the people really didn't question the fact that she was a woman, the fact that she was Jewish. I think they tried to get something on her and they couldn't. And so that was even better. It was like, okay, no, this is really legit. So I think people really like that. Yeah, I think her opponents really what we talked about. It's more than political. It's also like the class situation that in Mexico has governed for a really long time too, in a very quiet way. Um, Regarding the cartels and the immigrants, like what do we feel about that and if she's improving the situation? What I know is that these situations are incredibly complex and they involve other countries. They've been it's situations that have been building over the years. So it's not going to be an immediate thing to solve, and it's not going to be just like easy or like a one answer kind of thing. But I definitely do feel from what I see that she's knowing how to give the support the way that she can right now. I really am seeing that although we cannot see something drastic immediately, but I see in the gestures and in the way that she's handling the situation that she'll she'll be able to maintain a peaceful, the most peaceful situation for now. Honestly, I know that it's a very complex situation. So I just really hope for the best when it comes to these kinds of situations. And with the drug cartels, it's also just a very complex thing to talk about because cartels are in everything, really. It's not just one isolate group. They are a part of the government in some situations. They are very embedded in society. They're very embedded in the private sector as well. So it's also not just a one answer thing, but I've definitely seen through very different initiatives that there is one real, true concern to address this.
I just take one quote from her that along the lines of what you're talking about. This is what she said in her speech, just a short quote at the CELAC this last month, the last 2 months. She says, in front of these 33 heads of state, the main tenet of our work is to maintain the well-being of peoples, which eliminates racism, classism, sanctions, and criminalization of migrants that causes the migrant movements. She continued, heroes and heroines are immigrants who not only support Mexico with U.S. jobs, but also who work to support the U.S. economy itself, no matter their immigration status.
Yeah, exactly. She really has a language for peace. And I think that is just like a breath of fresh air. And because I believe her, I believe really that she will fight for peace, or I don't really like that phrase, but that she will put people at the front of how they deal with the situation. And yeah.
And Regina, we have one of our wonderful peacemakers with a hand raised. So Robin Lloyd would like to ask a question. So go ahead, Robin.
Okay, great. Well, what I read about is the flow of guns from the United States to Mexico. And, you know, they've identified the gun manufacturers, the way in which people, men, obviously, usually go and buy guns at various places and then manage to smuggle them across the border. So the important thing at the border is not so much Mexicans coming across to the United States, but guns going across to Mexico. And there seems to be collusion between both sides to let that happen because it makes money for the gun manufacturers. So how is the Moreno party dealing with that?
Well, I don't know specifically like with the guns, how they're dealing with it. I don't know if by any chance Ellen.
Yes, I do know something about that because people press me on that, you know, when I'm waving a flag about Mexico. Well, what about these guns and these? Anyway, Mexico has 2 gun stores and they go to incredible depths to anybody to buy a gun. It's almost impossible. We have many, many thousands of gun stores. It's and most of the guns that come in, and when they the tremendous increase in the National Guard to work on the cartel problem has found out that most of those guns come from the U.S. They can trace where the guns come from because they're confiscating tens of thousands of weapons. And they have. They're stopping giant cargo ships that Mr. Trump is claiming he's getting. He's capturing them on the seas, meaning the Gulf of Mexico, not the other. So he's saying we're getting them. Is giving him pretext for going further, intruding further into Mexico. But it's the Navy. The Navy has been capturing giant cargo ships with tons and tons of everything from fuel that's been stolen to giant, tremendous number of trucks, drugs, and they're every morning they come and give a report of what they've captured and they give pictures. It's not just, you know,
It's not over landlines, or it's
well, this is something recent with the ships now, because we have 2 destroyers off the coast of Gulf of Mexico, close to their waters, the Mexican waters, which is, she's not making a big deal about it. But the border situation, I don't know what's coming and going over that. I just do know the results in the reports that are given that have very grounded data to back them up of where those guns are coming from, and the fact that Mexico only has 2 gun stores that you can buy guns from. So it becomes pretty obvious guns are not being brought in from Mexico. I mean, they're not being manufactured or anything.
No, no, actually, what I do know from the past, from about over 15 years ago, is that when guns started coming into Mexico, it was it was something that the president did. It was something that everyone was complicit. Nowadays, I mean, his Secretary of Defense is being prosecuted, I think, in the U.S., and like they committed all kinds of felonies, you know. So that's what we changed from, or that was where we were coming from, and why now having these things like for real, having the National Guard or the Marina on with the president's agenda, that makes a huge difference, because before they used to be complicit, and now they're actually, all those things are turning around from a very deep place. That's why the National Guard had a very bad reputation at the beginning. People were scared that it was going to be a way to militarize the country and to enforce everything through violence. But I don't think so. I think it was a necessary move to unite all the different security forces of the country, put them all together in one single agenda with one single way of monitoring and enforcing what they do. And I actually think that was a good move, although people were very afraid of it. I think it was the way to get everyone on board with the strategy and not have a security and different areas just like having certain independence and different agendas, and allowing for that to make it easier for guns to come in, for like things to go and move around the country. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a very big accusation that she's militarizing the country. Well, she's mixing the National Guard. It's become just as much civilian as it has been to look out for crime. The National Guard is building some of the hospitals, schools, railroads. The railroad situation is just unbelievable all through the country.
Mm-hmm.
They're the first in North America, not Canada, not the US, but Mexico is giving up trains. They go 200 kilometers an hour. So kilometers an hour, is it 200 kilometers a month? 200 kilometer, 200 what? It's not.
Let me see if I can find it.
200 kilometers an hour. Anyway, these bullet trains, they're called. And so they're going all the way up to Chihuahua and
Toluca.
Yeah. They're going north where it's very, very dry.
Mm-hmm. Querétaro.
Yeah, Querétaro, that's right.
So could you just say a little bit about the BN Star program and women? And then I think that would, and then if there are any other questions, but I do want to hear a little bit about the program.
Well, my experience with the program is mostly what I've heard from people. I heard from my gardener's father when I lived in Puebla. He was benefiting from doing reforestation around his land and growing food, and it was like some kind of agricultural a program based on regenerating. And so he was receiving benefits from it, and he was very happy, and other people in the community were a part of it. I do hear from a lot of the women, like from my mom, who is retired. She recently said that like no matter what, you never miss the payment. And having that kind of reliance with the government in Mexico feels very big. I know that with the daycares, the situation with the daycares and the aid that they're doing for the women, I also know that the women are in fact receiving that money that is just years ago, programs like this, you would not see the money get to the place. And nowadays, when you hear from all the different groups that it is, and that they're somehow benefiting from one thing or the other, I think is amazing. And yeah, for the women, I think that what we want is more safety and like, yeah, to feel safe on the streets and be able to move around and feel respected when we do it. And at least in Mexico City, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was happening in other places, but you do feel that shift. It definitely feels how, the police is just nicer. It feels more genuine. There's a lot of tourists, and I think that it's also part of the priority to take care of the tourists, and that's actually making things speed up, because it means that we also have to be a more respectful society, more inclusive, cleaner, that we should have our streets maybe a bit better and our sidewalks, that public money should be more and more invested in those things, and that people should really look at those things that sometimes we get used to, but tourists notice. And so I think, yeah, I think that this is a really good moment for Mexico. And I think that all kinds of groups and all kinds of communities have their own reason to feel that way. And it's just great to have a woman represent this movement right now.
Regina, I wanted to ask you about the women's benefit that is part of Benestar, and that was something that I think it's hard for us to believe. And this is something that Claudia campaigned on, and she speaks about women aged 60 to 65 are all, for their housework, for the years they spent raising their family, for taking care of their husbands. Every place she goes in Mexico, she refers to the Benestar supplement for women those ages. They're not giving all 5 years, 60 to 65, the benefits at once, but it's an addition to their Social Security, because they're women, because she's a very strong feminist, and she's giving the benefits for those ages. For, when I say she, the government is giving benefits. Have you seen any results? Do you know anybody that receives those benefits, or have you seen any results?
Well, I mean, I think that that's the kind of thing that, to me, it just shows the understanding of what happens in this society, because there's so much relying on women, and women holding up households and families and being involved with the economical development in the country in a very invisible way. I don't know anyone personally. I'm going to ask specifically about that, because I do know, I recently have heard of women who are receiving benefits. I wouldn't know if it was specifically that, or based on, or on their retirement or something. But I have heard recently close cases to me that are getting benefits, and that it does come as a huge relief. It does come as a moment of like, oh my God, thankfully, after all this hard work, and like the having that opportunity to rely on it, because like I said before, these kinds of things wouldn't actually happen. And nowadays I do hear that all of it, or most of it, is actually like being put into motion. So I'm sure that that benefit is also being put into place in a very like rigorous way.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe she's coming out now.
Yes, so that's one of the things that I notice in these press conferences, and when she travels to different towns. Anybody who wants to follow her or see the enthusiasm with which the public in every town or city that she goes to, and she's constantly traveling to inaugurate highways or hospitals or schools, or expanding the university system, Juarez universities, that they're there. And and she speaks about the women who have the housework benefits, to see the farmers with their sombreros and their, the hardworking people in these audiences. And when the men, traditional men, they're so happy to hear it. And the wives, when she mentions, you've raised your children, you've even helped, taking care of your husband, they're just thrilled. And that surprises me, because it's a traditional country. And I'm just so thrilled that they're all responding to this, and not seeing as it a divisive between husband and men and women. But these traditional men are saying it. Of course, it means money for the family, right? but at the same time, I can tell that because she gives it all the morality and all the justice around it, that they're pleased with the whole concept. It's not just they're getting extra dollars or extra pesos.
No, absolutely not. It's been a transformation. That's how it's been seen, as a transformation. Absolutely, as a new paradigm, a new shift in the politics, and like a break, a new cycle from like the political history that we had for decades. And yeah, I was also very surprised to see how well accepted she was in the general community. And I think that overall she definitely came in at the right time too, and people were just like more prepared. Like it was just more so like, well, we had already had a female candidate too, 6 years before. Yeah. And so that was the first time that a female candidate was ever considered. By this time, I think people were a bit more used to the idea. The fact that she was with AMLO gave her like a lot of credentials in front of the people. And then she also has the academic credentials. Like she also has a very legit foundation and an amazing career in different areas and politics. And so there was just, she was undeniable as a candidate. And that was amazing to see that she managed to be undeniable while always maintaining her composure, never saying the wrong thing, or never falling for the criticism, or at the debates, are before, when she was a candidate too. Just seeing her handle the let's say like the struggle with the media, or like the opposition through the media, everything was just wonderful about her. And so she has left everyone with no choice but to be like, no, what, okay. hmm it's been really nice to watch.
Well, we are so happy, at least I am, and others I know, that this is happening in Mexico, that you're improving life for people, and and that this big improvement, also that a woman came on, as president. That's big. And Cheryl has her hand raised. So go ahead, Cheryl.
It was a thumbs up.
That's
And
right.
I think
Thumbs
we
up.
should look to how they got a woman president. They ran two women. Our next presidential election, we have to make sure there's a Republican woman and a Democratic woman. Then the
Exactly.
men will just either not vote, or
for
they'll
one.
have to vote for a woman. So that's my strategy for the next presidential election. We got to get two women candidates.
That's a great point, Cheryl. And just to add to that, imagine how strong Claudia was, that the opposition tried to emulate her in order to like get the votes. That's how strong she came in. And so, yeah, it ended up being another woman, and it had to be a woman at the end of the day. I'm so glad that it was Claudia.
Well, that's great. So thank you both, Regina and Ellen, for this. I think it was lovely. So now we're going to go on to our regular Jane Addams meeting, which I open up and I have people make announcements. So
are there any more questions, do you think, Diane, before you move on?
Are there any other more questions?
Or even comments would be great.
Any comments?
I think we all say thank you. Thank you both.
Okay, yes, I think so.
Thank you. And just to add, before I say goodbye, regarding you visiting Mexico, the city is just thriving right now. So if any of you have ever thought about visiting Mexico, this is an ideal time to do it. It's really fantastic what you get to see here. So I really encourage you to try it.
And we could take lessons from you before we come to learn
Of
Spanish.
course. Absolutely. I would love that.
I'll be
I
glad.
wish my sister and brother-in-law were still alive. They lived in Mexico for several decades.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Wow. Yeah, people come and they fall in love.
hmm.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We so appreciate it. Thank you both.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Regina has to leave. She has another meeting or something. So she said she would leave while we did the business. So, okay. Announcements. First of all, we'll take announcements and from anyone who has something to say. Anyone? Cheryl?
Well, as usual, the Disarm Committee asks you to pay attention to what's going on with the two major wars going on, Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, Israel. And please look at the e-news. Every month we all sent an e-news, those of us who are paid members, and the Disarm Committee always has an article in those e-news, and we always have things for you to do. So please, you could, if you haven't looked at the May one that came out some time ago, and I just submitted the June one, a very early deadline that we're given by the editor, but please read those, and not just the first paragraph that comes in your email, but when it says read more, please click that read more and go to read the rest of what we have to say, because there are actions that Wolf members can be taking to try to bring these wars to a diplomatic end. So thank you. That's what I'm speaking on behalf of the Disarm End Wars Committee. Thank you.
Yes, and Ellen, who's co-chair with you and me on it, has her hand raised.
Yes,
So
I'd
Ellen,
just like to mention that if there's somebody here that has not been getting Wilf emails, e-news, it's available online at Wilf US Today. So you can check at the previous e-news also and see what we've been doing. And I'll invite you to.
you're saying the e-news is on that?
I think so.
Oh, I didn't think so, but I
Yeah.
get it. I can access them from the website easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah, you said Wolf. You said Wolf. Today, like the YouTube.
Oh, no,
You didn't mean
I'm
the YouTube.
sorry.
No,
Wolf US, yeah.
the
yeah,
website.
Wolf
Yeah.
US Today is on YouTube. That you'll be able to see this video on Wolf US Today.
right. Yeah. So that's good. Okay. Does anyone else have any announcements or any questions or anything? So this is a free talking thing. And our intern is here. Shiley is here. So Shiley,
Hello.
want to say a little word about what you're doing?
Sure. So my name is Shiley. I am currently a rising junior at Duke University. And I'm interning with Wilf this summer for my public policy degree. We have to do an internship that is in some area of public policy. I kind of extended it to human rights, so this certainly qualifies. As of now, I don't really have any I have a few tasks and projects that I'm working on with various members across the country, but if there's anything that y'all would like me to do, whether it's research or infographics or websites, whatnot, send it my way. Diane has my email address. So, and we meet every Monday at 10 a.m. to discuss 10 a.m. Eastern to discuss my upcoming week. So
Yeah, and so you can get on the Zoom call too at 10 o'clock if you want to.
So are you able to
10 o'clock.
code HTML? Do you know how to actually change, code on the web?
That may be a little bit out of my scope.
Okay.
A lot of it out of my scope. I'm more surface level creating websites, like the easy stuff, not the in-depth coding.
Like GoDaddy, is that one you use? Have you ever used that?
I have not.
What have you done what package have you used for websites?
Normally just like Google sites. WordPress is one that I've worked with before.
Okay, WordPress, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's common. So, okay, well, if there isn't anything else, we can adjourn early, which is always good. So, does anybody have anything else to say or talk about? So last week, I'll just say something. We had the taxpayers against genocide had a big demonstration here. So it was really interesting to meet several of them from California. They'd come across the country for that. And and then there is a public health that wanting universal health care in the United States, May 31st. I know that's happening. And that's the same day as the tribunal, that is the Philadelphia tribunal that's taking place. So there's lots of stuff happening. So I see 2 hands raised. I'll take Robin and then Ellen. How about that? Robin? And you're muted, Robin. And so is Ellen.
There. I've been in the process of moving from a apartment with lots of stairs to an apartment that is on one level. And so I've been missing lots of emails and so on and so forth, but still focused on the 80th anniversary of the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And here in town, we have the guy who developed the dot chart, which I'm planning to try to publicize on a larger level. So take a look for that when it comes out. His name is Jim Geyer, and the dot chart symbolizes all of the nuclear weapons held by the U.S. and Russia in a grid, and in the center is one of the grids has one dot, and that dot represents all of the explosive power used in World War II. And then there are 5,000 dots in the grid around it, representing all of the arsenal of killing power that our countries are holding. What are they waiting for? I mean, why are they building more of them? This is a madness that just obsesses me. And so I'm just trying to raise some awareness about it.
So regarding this 80th anniversary, and indeed you will see mention of this in the e-news that I've asked you to read when it comes out in early June. There is actually nationwide effort to many different organizations who I consider our sister organizations are working on their own ways of highlighting this anniversary. We know the media likes the dates which end in 5 or 0, so 80th is a big deal. But as well as looking back at what happened, the terrible things that happened 80 years ago, we're trying to also, all these organizations who we work with, point out that there are 13,000 nuclear weapons in existence, most of which are much stronger than the 2 bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the absolute need that we need to get disarmament of the 9 countries who own those weapons. Mostly Russia and the US are the ones who own most of those 13,000. So many of our branches do things just around in early August, the 6th and the 9th of August. The 9th happens to be a Saturday, so it's a good day for your branch to plan something, to inform the public about the fact that these weapons exist now in much greater numbers than they did in 1945. And we will be providing resources to you, and the PSR, the Physicians for Social Responsibility, will actually have a calendar that's the kind of calendar where you can type in your event into their calendar so that anybody in the country, for example, can type in their zip code. What's happening near me around early August, for example? So PSR not got it up yet, but they promised us this calendar that will be available to any organization to put in their own actions and their own events. This gets a much wider public audience to come to these events. So those are the kind of things that other organizations are helping with. And so please, if your branch, well, Jane Addams branches, you're all scattered about, but you'll be able to use that PSR calendar when it's available, and I'll be letting you all know when it is available, to find actions by other organizations, like Back from the Brink, World Beyond War, PSR, etc. Because they have chapters all over the place. So even though you're not in a branch that's a physical branch, you will be able to probably find something going on near you. And so I will be sending to Wilf Branch's list about these things. So always keep an eye out. And Diane explained to me, you get that as a Jane Addams liaison, and then you forward, when I send to Wilf Branches, you forward to your, 400 people or so you've got on your list?
Right,
Yeah,
I do.
right. So they will know, they will find out how to find these events about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Thank you. I see Ms. Sanderson has her hand.
Yes. Hi, Mary. Go ahead, ask.
Hi, I'm so glad I could attend. My grandson is usually here on Wednesdays, but his other grandpa's in town. Thank you, everybody, for the talk about Claudia and Mexico. I really appreciated it. Talking about announcements, if there are members here who would like to make our impact stronger or more strategic by paying more attention to the money behind the war machine, I would encourage you to look into the Women, Money, and Democracy Committee in WILP. We're serious about finding out why all the wonderful actions WILP and other organizations have done for decades don't seem to get any traction, and to the contrary, all the warring gets worse. So we are very serious about finding out what it is and how it works, the money behind the war machine. And I would encourage everybody to do that with the WILP, Women, Money, and Democracy Committee. And our committee has an alliance with another organization that I would welcome you to note down and possibly look up, and you could easily interest you, which is the Alliance for Just Money. The Alliance for Just Money especially focuses on the fact that all the money that ever gets created is created by banks for their own use first. And so when we want to have participatory budgeting, or we want to have needs met, we're always using the money that some warmongering outfit spends into the economy after they borrow it. Or the other main way that they do it, besides creating turmoil for their own benefit, banks lend a lot of money, maybe 40% of the money in the economy, for housing, high-end housing, real estate. But these are all, I don't want to go to details. I want people to get curious about finding this out for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very good.
I was just mentioning the when I went to Chicago for the Alliance for Just Money last year, and we all stayed in the hostel in Chicago, and we shared. There were 8 of us in a room. Anyway, yes, it's a great cause. So, and it would be so great if banks did not create the money, but it was controlled and made by the government, some agency who knew what they were doing, and it would be like public banking where it works for the people and not for the corporations and the wars. But anyway, okay, well, I think we're about to end the meeting if there's nothing else. So thank you all for attending, and have a great week.